Hello, I'm Roisin Wilmot, the Royal Town Planning Institute's Director for Wales and Northern Ireland, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by Julie James, Welsh Government Minister for Housing and Local Government. Welcome, Minister.
Very nice to be here.
Thank you for joining us today. The Minister and I will be having a short conversation to discuss the actions planning can take to address the recovery in response to the pandemic. I think everyone will agree this is an important subject affecting all communities across the whole of Wales. Minister, if I could start asking you about Building Better Places, a document you published this summer. Could you share with us what this says and what you hope to achieve from it?
Yeah, so we were really pleased to produce Building Better Places because it pinpoints the most relevant policy priorities and actions to aid in the recovery from COVID-19 pandemic. And it recognises the pivotal role that planners play in shaping our society for the future. So we're really keen here in Wales to have a plan-led recovery because we want a just green recovery, as we say. So that means socially just build the places that we want to see in Wales for the future. This is where we were going before, and what we hope we will be able to do now is accelerate that process. So the plan has to be around decarbonisation, it has to be around general well-being, it has to be around places that people want to live in, stay in. During the pandemic, most people have spent a lot more time at home than they have before, and the place that they live in has become even more important than it was before, and it's become sort of front and centre of the way people think. So the document is about beginning the process of identifying the actions that we all need to take to build on that feeling, and to set out the part we all have to play in ensuring that our communities of tomorrow are the places that we really want to, live, work, play, be in.
Okay, thank you. This approach has a really close fit with what we at the RTPI are asking for in our campaign to plan the world we need. But there are some quarters that will say planning has become too bureaucratic, it's become expensive, and to respond to the recovery there needs to be a change. What would you say to them?
So I think, it's always a compromise, isn't it, between trying to get the right development in the right place with the right kind of democratic involvement and actually getting development that's, speedy enough to be still relevant by the time it's built and, not a huge delay in the system and so on. And for most of my career, and yours I know as well, Roisin, you've tried to balance those two things. So I think, there is a cost to developers of going through the process, and it can be difficult for small and medium-sized companies to do that. But there is a huge benefit to it as well. So we know that, that post-planning land has a huge uplift in what it's worth. But also, of course, it really matters to people in local communities that what's developed there matches what they want and need and suits that community and makes it sustainable. So it is about that balance, isn't it? So I absolutely accept that we need to always be looking to streamline the process and make sure that it works, it's fit for purpose. But I'm really keen as well on making sure that the public have the right level of engagement in that, and people have a real say in where they live. And the planning system is the system that we use to enable that. So it's about getting that balance right. We will be working really hard with local authorities to make sure that we put them in a good position to get the balance right as well.
Okay, thank you. That leads on to my next question, really, is about public sector funding. And we know it's under increasing pressure. And it's a well-known fact that the budgets available to public planning services are in a really poor position. It's been highlighted in many reports, including a recent Senedd Public Accounts Committee report. And the RTPI believes that this really needs to change to support the delivery of the good planning. What action do you feel can be taken to improve this situation?
So only yesterday, actually, I announced another £264 million for local authorities across Wales, which is part of the general support that the government's putting in place for local authorities. Because, before the pandemic, which seems like decades ago now, doesn't it? We had actually put the best settlement local authorities had for 10 years in place, but it was after 10 years of austerity. And planning systems, like many other systems that weren't the big statutory services in local authorities have been really badly hit by that austerity programme. There's no doubt about that. So we're really keen to make sure that local authorities are in the best possible place to recover. And part of that recovery has got to be planning. So just very recently, we put regulations through the Senedd that put a 20% increase on fees. That'll go some way to improving cost recovery for local planning authorities, but it's only an interim measure and it doesn't bridge the gap that we know exists. So I'm sure you've got these figures, but it's about 14.5 million a year to provide development management control in local authorities, and they get around 9 million in fees. So there's a gap there. I'm really keen, though, that local authorities shouldn't just think that they should fund planning from its fee income. Planning is a really important part of the local authority. It's part of its local engagement programme and it's very much part of its building back to the recovery. So we're very keen to make sure that local authorities value planning in the right way. And I think there's a big agenda there to work on getting the chief planning officers to be, properly included in senior management boards and to make sure that we value the individuals and the profession because it's an absolutely pivotal part of building Wales into the place we want it to be. We haven't got any chance of introducing any kind of legislation or anything of that sort. We're pared right back to the bone here in Wales for the rest of this Welsh Parliament term. Scotland, I know, have done something around chief planning officers and their status, and we'll be watching that very carefully to see how that works out. But I'm also very keen on working with local authorities to make sure that we get, that they understand that they need to nurture their planning system, because actually it's the key to the development that they all talk about wanting for the recovery.
That's really good to hear. Thank you, Minister. The new National Development Framework was due to be laid in the Senedd back in April, but obviously because of the pandemic, it was delayed, which is understandable. You refer to it in Building Better Places as an important part of the planning policy jigsaw. Can you share with us a revised timetable and perhaps give us a taster of what to expect in the NDF?
Yeah, so it's my intention to lay the revised NDF literally as soon as I possibly can when we go back after the summer break. And then we'd like the final one to be published before spring or early spring next year. It's the last bit of our jigsaw, really. So, Roisin, you'd have heard me talking, planners across Wales will have heard me talk about this for a long time. But, obviously we've had the LDPs in place. We're working very hard on getting the regional strategy bit in place now with the local government bill going through and the constitution of the corporate joint committees, they're called, which is where the regional planning strategy will sit across the 4 areas of Wales. And now this is the last bit. It's backwards, isn't it? We should have put the NDF in place first and then the regional, but you have to get into the circle somewhere. So that's where we are. And of course, the NDF is the framework. It goes alongside Planning Policy Wales, and the documents sit together very nicely. I spend a lot of time saying to people, well, you have to read them together. It's not just a standalone document. I characterise it as, if you have a nice little map of Wales laid out, if you can set out where you want the big developments to be, and then you have a regional strategy that goes with that, then when you're a developer coming forward or you're a local authority trying to work out what your requirements are, you will have some of that stuff already in place. It will be much easier to negotiate with people around what needs to be there. So it's a little map of, you'll know, Roisin, I think that I'm very keen on computer games. So I always equate it to something called Sim City, where you set it all out nicely and then you know where the infrastructure is, and so you can plan your communities accordingly. It really matters to people. They really want to know where this big infrastructure is going to be. They want to know where the energy projects are going to be. They want to know where the big motorway exchanges and infrastructure, energy supply, all those sorts of things are. And in doing that, they can see where their community fits inside it. So, it's really important to have these things in place. And it's very important to make sure we have good public engagement when we do it as well. So, as I started off by saying, didn't I, this year has seen more of a focus than ever before on where people live. It's become really important to us. Maybe the way we'll work and live in future will change as a result of this. And so having that good framework in place really matters.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for your time today. It's been really interesting and so reassuring to see the value placed on planning and the difference that it's able to make for the better. The RTPI, as you know, supports placemaking and are members of the Placemaking Wales partnership instigated by Welsh Government, and it's referred to in Building Better Places. And we look forward to welcoming you again to speaking about this and launching the Placemaking Wales Charter at our online conference, Welsh Planner Live, on 23rd of September. Thank you to everyone for joining us. If you would like to find out more about the Welsh Planner Live programme, please go to rtpi.org.uk/Welsh Planner Live. Thank you.
Thanks very much.